over here, mate. Are you sure you're ready to go in there? Are you sure you're ready to go into the Goblin Caves? Do you know what kind of mess you can get into? There's half-naked lizardmen barbarians around every corner, and they're ready to fondle your coin purse. Warlocks and bards who will do anything to get a hold of your troll skin. And sneaky green-skinned ladies eager for a man's virtue, although I've never seen one. No worries, mate. The Guildleader's going to show you a few more secret techniques so you can get into the caves, get the gold, and escape with your chastity intact.
Alright, so welcome to the Guild's Guide and Getting the Gold. What we're going to be going over in this video is going to be first off how to recognize a hostile player, different matchups they are most likely to encounter in the Goblin Caves, and then utilizing either the Troll or the Cyclops to aid you in defeating your enemies. Let's get to it. Not everyone in the dungeon is going to be hostile. Some players are likely just to give you the sign and then pass you by, but as a rogue, letting another adventurer see you and know your position gives up one of our main advantages in a fight. So there's a few key things that you're going to need to try to recognize when you're encountering someone else in the dungeon. First and foremost, do not trust the squatting sign of peace. And always make sure to keep your distance from another player. Secondly, you should notice that if they are approaching, are their weapons out? If they have weapons out and they're getting close, it's time to start stabbing. So in this clip, we've already killed a ranger, we've started the troll boss, and another rogue is going to enter into the room. We'll be covering later on how to manipulate the boss in your favor, but this is a good example of it just real quick. Right, so he gets hit by the I-beam, we land a throwing knife on him that poisons him, and then we get blinded. So we right now we just use our ears, we stealth again to try to sweat off that blinding debuff, and we reset the boss for safety. At this point, I started trying to talk to this guy to try and see if we can come to some sort of agreement. He gives me the sign. There it is.
Just back off. Hey, listen, I'll give you the fucking pile. Just back the fuck off. Yeah? Close the door. Close the door. Close the door. Close the door. Stay back, mate. I'll kill the fucking boss. You can have the pile. Yeah? If you open the fucking door, mate, it's gonna be on.
Alright, so we've given him our terms. We've applied a little bit of pressure to him to keep him away. He doesn't want to come in the room and fight us while the boss is also happening. He tried that once and it didn't work out in his favor. But we know that basically when he opens the door, that the fight's going to be on. And right now in the Goblin Caves, the Cyclops is probably the more forgiving of the two bosses for a rogue, since you can, if you get hit by his I-beam, you can stealth it and reset the fight. If you get blinded, you can just kite him and avoid him, and we can deal a fairly decent amount of damage to him with our daggers to get him out of rockfall phase quickly. Again, so let's get back in here. We'll see what's going to happen at the end of the fight. So as soon as we kill the boss, the door's open. He's broken our terms of agreement. That means the fight is on. You couldn't tell he's already shot at us a bunch of times. Now in this case, it's a mirror match, and usually I'm pretty confident in those. But this is just a good example of a guy who tried to fake us out with some early signs of peace, but clearly his intentions were hostile.
Now it's guild policy to give every rogue a chance. There's many a thief in the dungeon who aren't operating on a guild charter. It's important to recognize the signs.
Alright, now we're going to cover a couple of the matchups that you're most likely to run into when you're in the Goblin Caves. It's a very prominent space for Barbarians, for Warlocks, for Bards, and for other rogues. So first up we have the Barbarian. When we're approaching the center room between Troll and Cyclops, you always want to try to make sure that you're as prepared as possible for an encounter. We've caught this Barbarian looting here. We try to get a couple of ranged hits on him and fail. So we make a mistake here and he clips us in the back. We run out of the room, land another throwing knife, and he starts throwing hand axes at us. He lands a couple. We're in critical condition here. We need to heal up. We need to keep our space and try to get him to make a mistake. So in that moment, you can pull your daggers out faster than he can pull his axe out. It's your time to get a couple hits in before you go back to keeping your distance. Shut the door behind him. This is going to give us a chance to bandage. Now, as a rogue, you have very quick action speed. The more action speed you have, the faster you can bandage. It'll help you out a lot. So we recover a little bit of our health, but we're still in critical condition. Just a cheeky torch throw. Trying to light him up, if you know what I mean. So let's go over what we saw there at the end of that clip. For Rogue versus Barbarian, you want to use your stealth to get a little distance if you need to use recovery items. You want to play off doorways and narrow corridors when they're using their two-handed weapons. You want to always try to soften the target up from ranged. And before we go in for an all-in kill, we want to bait out an attack and then punish them. 2 dagger strikes is about all you can get off before they can recover and swing again. The longer the fight goes, the more those poisons are doing work for us. We really need to make this fight a long one. If you see a Barbarian pull a potion out or sheath their weapon for any reason, that's an opportunity for you to capitalize on. In this next clip, we catch a Warlock coming up from the boss treasure room. He immediately tries to get hostile with us. We stealth to avoid being cursed. We stealth again to avoid being cursed. Once he misses, he fully commits to running away from us. We pursue him, hear him pop a blow of corruption, but he doesn't pull his weapon out. So we keep up the pressure here.
Oh, you bastard.
And he's trying to take the extract out, but there's monsters preventing him. That, and he's going to use those monsters to begin to heal up with Torture Mastery. So if we don't pressure him here, it's very easy that he could get an advantage over us by life draining those skeletons. We use ambush to give us a speed boost so we can keep the pressure up, and then we secure the kill. All in all, this Warlock player wasn't the best, but it still can teach us a valuable lesson about how to fight against Warlock. We can use our stealth to avoid being hit by his hit scan curses, but if we're already cursed, we should hold on to our stealth. Also, there's a tendency for Warlocks to pull around a large group of monsters behind them so they can leech off of their HP with their curses. Sometimes it's in your best benefit that if you don't feel comfortable pushing through those monsters to get to the Warlock, that you kill those monsters to reduce their ability to heal off of them and keep their HP high. Mainly when you're fighting a Warlock, you're going to have to gauge their HP versus yours. And when they phantomize, if they have that ability, it can give you an opportunity to either recover or to keep up the pressure of the engagement by trying to stay on top of them, so that immediately when they come out of phantomize, you can finish the fight. In this case, the shorter the fight, the better. And now it's time to talk about the Rogue versus Bard matchup. This next fight showcases more of their variability rather than this player's individual skill, but that's always something that we have to keep in mind when we're fighting against a bard. The first two things that you always need to keep in mind is that you should try to avoid their Shriek of Weakness, and if you are shrieked, you should avoid fighting in melee with the bard. It's a flute song that will put a debuff on you that will significantly reduce your armor rating, enough so that the bard can kill you in 2 to 3 shots from their rapier. So we need to avoid this while also trying to find an opportunity to get in. The main detriment that a bard has is that to play all of their songs, or to switch to ranged, or to switch to rapier and buckler, they're going to have to swap their weapons a lot, and that's something that we can capitalize on. Now, you've seen some of the in and out fighting in the previous clips. When they have a ranged weapon out, we need to get in close. And when they switch to their rapier and buckler, we can go back to kiting. We need to play opposite of what weapons they have in their hand. And if they have an instrument in their hand, we need to avoid getting debuffed while still trying to keep the pressure up. Bards can be a challenging fight because your opportunity window is fairly slim due to a perk they have called Superior Dexterity that allows them to weapon swap and instrument swap much faster. They're not as dangerous in melee as a Barbarian, but if you're debuffed, you will go down quickly. Bards also have to make a significant trade-off between movement speed, damage, and survivability. So learn to recognize what type of bard you're fighting against at a moment's glance. With this information, we can capitalize on Rogue's superior movement speed to be able to keep our distance when necessary or get in close when we have an opportunity.
What? This is Cyclops. More people are on their way down here. You mind giving me a hand real quick, and then you and I can get back to our fucking fight? Yeah, let's do it.
Now we're going to cover a bit of the basics on boss aggro and manipulation. Aggro works in 2 ways, by proximity and on damage done. The closeness of your characters to the boss generates aggro over time, as well as the amount of damage that you deal to the boss also generates aggro. So when we stealth, the aggro is temporarily wiped, but when we reappear, we go back to the top of his aggro list, if we've dealt damage to it or been close to it. Also, if the boss is active and someone else enters the room, they will temporarily go to the top of that list, and thus pull the boss away from you and toward the entering opponent or ally. Now both Troll and Cyclops have important mechanics that we can exploit to get them to dispatch our enemies, but it's tricky, and familiarity with all of the mechanics and attacks of the boss is highly recommended before attempting such forbidden techniques. Let's cover a few basics first. Close the doors to the boss chamber after you enter, so that if there's an invading player, you'll be able to hear the audio cue when they open it. Next, if you're standing on the outer ring of the boss room, you won't activate that boss. Keep this in mind when you stealth, so that if you need to get away, you won't re-aggro the boss when trying to open the chamber door or scrap with a potential invader. Alternatively, you could keep both of the doors of the boss chamber open, so that when invaded, you have an easy escape route. Just keep in mind that you could potentially be surrounded if enemy players are on either side. The ramps outside of both the troll and the Cyclops room put you at a disadvantage, as fighting downslope of an enemy gives them an increased likelihood of hitting you in the dome. So in this next clip, we're going to use everything that we know about the Cyclops to defeat two players who are teaming together, grouped up to kill a boss. The only problem is that the Guildleader got there first. So what we're going to see is, as they come into the room, I stealth. Because they're already in the room and registered on the Cyclops' aggro table, he doesn't break out of his rockfall animation. And if you stay towards the outside of the rockfall, you have a much less likely chance of getting hit by the rocks. As these guys slowly are taking chip damage from each consecutive rockfall, that's our time to push them. We can also notice that once they've entered the room, I circle around to close off their exit. There's no way that they're going to get out of the boss room unless they go through me. One of the fighters even goes so far to try to turn his attention onto the Cyclops to get him out of the phase in hopes of saving his life, but it's too little, too late, and we score ourselves a double kill.
Right. Yeah. I know, Gimbal. I've got to get back in the dungeon so I can meet the Lich's quota, and you've got to get this astral cast posted to only wizards. Listen, if you're a rogue out there, these broadcasts are for your eyes only. Use this knowledge to get the upper hand the next time you're delving in the dungeons. And don't be afraid, show the guild a little support. Remember, join or die.